This is The Unhappy Millionaire, where entrepreneurs and other top performers discover how to go beyond the bank balance to create thriving, joyful lives. For more, visit theunhappymillionaire.com. Now, on to the show. So Tal, I want to tell you a quick story. A couple weeks ago now, my life has been going great recently. Like, my kids are flourishing. I have a great relationship. I love my work. But we noticed that my cat, who's 15, 16 years old, has been throwing up way more than the usual kitty hairball. And now it's a catastrophe, right? I have to make a vet appointment. And all I can think about is, oh my gosh, like, she's old. This is what happened to her brother when we had to put him down. I'm going to have to tell the kids, what is this going to cost to try to keep her healthy? And even though my life overall in the big picture was at a 9 or a 10, I was not enjoying my life for a couple of days until the happy news is it's all resolved and she's doing as well as a 15-year-old cat can do. It really drives home a point that I think is important in happiness. And that is, the way I think about it is, happiness is essentially a positive. You hear a lot of people say, oh, happiness is about not having negatives in your life. But I think it's about really achieving positive values, doing something to achieving things, creating things. But, and this is the key point, you're not going to experience your life as happy if you have stress, anxiety, worry dominating your life and overwhelming your life.
I want to tell you a story about anxiety and happiness. I'm reading philosophy and literature, and I'm getting new ideas, realizing that my life is not where it needs to be. I'm sucking it in, and I'm thinking, and I'm introspecting, and I'm coming to the conclusion, the rational conclusion, that I need to make a big change in my life. And I finish a book, and it's midnight, and I go into my walk-in closet. I close the door. It's dead dark, right? Just me in there. My eyes closed. I'm standing there. Everybody's asleep. And I tell myself in my head, okay, tomorrow we're quitting the job. And immediately it's almost like I woke something up in my subconscious mind, and I was washed, and I felt it all over my body with a wave of anxiety. I could hardly breathe, just from the prospect of me making a decision to leave my job and everything that meant at that time. That was good anxiety, because I knew that what the reason behind anxiety was protecting something that was irrational, versus what you just said, which is, my life is happy. There are bad things that happen, and I have those protective emotions. I call them protective, by the way, not negative, because I don't think there is anything negative about a bad emotion. Those are protective emotions. But it's rational. It's like your value of yours or your cat or your dog is suffering. It's not good, but they're not in contradiction with your happiness. So my story leads to a whole process of understanding what's behind that wave of anxiety that I felt, just to realize that I need to fight it. In a way, re-educate the child in my head, I call him the child in my head, that says, no change. No matter what, no change. So I think it's very important when we talk about anxiety, we talk about fears, we talk about even sadness, to understand what's behind them. The role of emotions, what are they good for? What do they message? What is the message that they're carrying? And how do we interpret that? And what do we do with that? Because I think a full life, a healthy life, a happy life, it's not just the happy of people smiling. There are bad things that happen. Reality is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. There's ups and downs. That's, for me, part of the complexity of creating a happy life. And part of it is to know how to deal with the lows, with the, again, protective emotions that say, something's wrong, something's wrong. And you don't know if something's wrong. Maybe something might be wrong. Something might not be wrong. If it's your cat dying, then it's obvious. But if you want to leave your job and try something else, and you're getting those protective emotions, that maybe you need to check something behind them. So as we start talking about anxiety and emotion in general, I just wanted to say that one of the big revelations I had is to really unpack what emotions are, what are their role in happiness, including the fact, if you think about the end of it, happiness is a reward, an emotional reward, inner value judgment. So you really need to understand emotions even to experience happiness. I see a lot of people that do everything right because they don't have a good relationship with their emotions. They can derive the happiness that they earned.
I think this is a big issue for even the most financially successful people. They can really feel that their life and even their work life is dominated by fear and anxiety. And so you mentioned just getting clear on what emotions even are. And the way I think about it is, look, we have ideas, right? Judgments about this is the way the world is, this is what's true. And we can automatize those ideas, right? Like 2 + 2 = for. You're not having to go through a reasoning process once you've learned it and made it automatic. And we can also automatize certain kinds of behaviors and action. When I learned to drive, all right, put foot on pedal, don't put other foot on brake unless I try to brake, steer here. But then it just becomes automatic. And we can do the same thing. We have the same automatic thinking involved in that are behind emotions. Emotions are an automatic first take judgment about, is this thing good for me or is this thing bad for me? Is this a source of value or is this something that threatens my values? But it doesn't show up as an articulated idea of my cat getting sick is bad. It comes out in fear, stress, anxiety. The key to understanding emotions is to understand what is that judgment that's lurking behind that feeling. And this is the real key. Those judgments aren't always true. I can experience enormous fear. I remember I had a friend, he was going to some restaurant and he saw the girl that he was dating with some other guy and it felt an enormous surge of jealousy, resentment, walked over, and she smiles and introduces her brother. And of course, he feels relief. He felt a little stupid for getting all worked up, but it was the idea of his emotion was telling him this situation is a threat to what I care about. But it wasn't. In reality, it was just the girl he's dating with her brother. And so we have to actually understand our emotions and think about, is this right? Is this a rational take? Because emotions are just that first take. And I think we can dive in to what are the kinds of thoughts and evaluations behind stress or anxiety. I mean, I gave simple example of stress where my cat's sick, what's going to happen? Sometimes you give me a project and it's, here's the deadline. It's, oh man, can I meet the deadline? Or if you get a letter from the IRS saying your audit is coming up, typically a kind of stressful feeling. But how do you think about the ideas that are and the judgments lurking behind stress and anxiety? And how do you distinguish the two? Because I do think there's a distinction.
There's a huge difference between anxiety and stress and fear. Actually, for me, anxiety and fear are very close. Fear is fear of something known, where I feel like, oh, this is not good. This is a barking dog. Doesn't seem like he wants to lick me. I'm afraid. And anxiety is a much more sophisticated emotion because usually it entails a fear of an unknown or fear of something deeper. And it's a much more complicated emotion for me because anxiety, usually when I identify what I feel as anxiety, it tells me something is wrong and I need to do some work. And the work I need to do is to figure out what's causing the anxiety, what's causing the fear. Could be fear of many different things, including just protecting some kind of what I call emotional scar tissue from my childhood, where this kind of pain I don't want to feel again. The child in me saying, we've had that ridicule back in the past and we don't want to experience that again. So, and that feels like that. So we're not going to do it. Maybe rational fears of like, yeah, we failed miserably and you're doing it again and I'm going to warn you. So anxiety for me means let's do some introspective work, identify and verbalize. What is the value judgment, as you said, behind the emotion? Because you walk into a place, you see someone, oh, this guy again, right? And then you feel a little down. You just immediately recalled all your experiences with that person, passed the judgment that it's not going to be good. And now you're feeling bad about it, not even knowing maybe today the discussion will be good or something. This is the way I think about how immediate and unsophisticated, if you will, the emotions sometimes pass judgment with, and I need to do the work.
I experienced this a few years back, went out on my own for the first time and did freelancing as a coach and consultant and writer. And I found that towards the beginning of it, I just had this pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. I wasn't looking forward to work. And when I tried to figure out like what's going on, I realized I was getting caught in these trains of thoughts like, what if my customers quit on me? And what if I can't find new ones? And it wasn't that I had any specific reason to doubt. Like they were very happy with my work, but it was just this fear that wouldn't go away. And then I even had the fear of what if I land a big client and can't perform? So maybe I don't even want to get a really great opportunity. And realizing that there was no real thing in reality that was threatening my values. It was just a fear of, can I perform? Am I really capable? And that it was much more about my view of me than about anything external in reality. And that to me is like a quintessential anxiety situation.
And you see, this is what I call a complicated value judgment because there's maybe some truth. Maybe you know that you need to up your game because you're getting customers that are more demanding. You feel like the content you have to offer them is not good enough. You need to do more research. And some of it is just, I'm not worthy. Who am I to advise to those people? Am I good enough? Maybe imposter syndrome issues and so on. I think the takeaway is, if you feel anxiety, we'll talk about stress. I think stress is an interesting one because stress has a lot of rational warnings in it, especially for people who work really hard. It's the time to slow down, put on this detective hat. What's happening here? Why am I feeling this? Who's talking and what are they saying in my head? Very sophisticated adult that says, yes, all signs show that you're going to do something bad, in which case let's change something. Or is it my unsophisticated 4-year-old saying, this looks like something I've experienced in my childhood. This is my trauma talking. It's irrational. I need to soothe my 4-year-old. I need to talk to them. I need to negotiate sometime and let the anxiety go, because that's what I did. I remember the first time I quit my job, it's like, look, it's going to be okay. And it felt like I'm carrying a 4-year-old with me who's screaming and kicking and saying, it'll be okay. You'll see. I'm the responsible adult. We'll take care of both of us. And I had to carry my subconscious with me. Stress is another thing. Stress, I think, is as a result of you maybe taking on too much, maybe doing more than what you really rationally can do. And your body and your mind is telling you, this is too much. We can't handle this. We've been working 100 hours a week. We hardly sleep. We don't have any relaxation. There's not a moment off for us. The muscles of the mind cannot relax. What are you doing? And even though you're doing all the right things, you're doing it too fast. You're not seeking help. You're taking on too much work. You're not delegating. You're not finding people who can help you do things that are hard for you. There's so many things to say about stress. I remember I was stressed for 4 years. It was not healthy. And after those 4 years, I felt completely burnt out to the point where I don't want to work anymore. So I went back home and I rested for 3 months just to get out of it, because it was a mistake. I didn't listen to the warnings when I pushed through, and it's like, oh, you're lazy. You can work hard. You can fly again. No problem. I did 1.7 million miles in 4 years. It was crazy. And I paid the price. And now I have a much better relationship with my stress because I listen to it.
Yeah, and I think those are really common in terms of ways that people deal with stress and anxiety. Toughing it out is a big one, particularly for high performers. Part of what got you good is that you can undergo things that are grueling, but they're not listening to that warning signal. You're referring to these as protective emotions, which I think is great, but they're only protective if you listen to what they say and try to figure out, what should I do about it? There's also a form of toughing it out that's wearing it as a badge of honor. I'm good because I go without sleep, don't take time to relax and have fun. That's what makes me. It's in effect what they try to base their self-esteem on, is the amount of stress and anxiety that they endure.
You can completely avoid it, right? I think for months, the inner voice in my head is, shut up, just shut up. We're doing this. This is tough. I'm hardly sleeping. I wake up. I don't remember even where I am. I wake up for 5 minutes. It's like, where am I? I don't remember. I landed somewhere last night. I'm having this meeting. I know, but where am I? And your body's like, this is too much. We're disoriented. I was not eating much. And I'm feeling sick to the point where I got a personal trainer and she told me, I don't know, you're not eating enough. You don't have any energy. You go eat something and then come back to the gym. So I was trying to, in a way, just beat down my body and my mind just by saying, you're not tough enough. And I'm completely ignoring you. You're the lazy part of me.
Yeah, the other one I've seen up close, I worked at a company many years ago where it was run by 2 people, and they were definitely dominated by anxiety, and they both just drank relentlessly and heavily, and one of them turned to food as well, numbing those negative feelings with something external that took the focus away from it. And that one was really sad because neither of them ever recovered, lost their companies, lost their fortunes. It was not a pretty sight. But what you saw was the destruction that comes from not listening to the protective emotions and trying to figure out what to say and how to deal with them in a healthy way.
And alcohol and food and others and drugs that are very, very common. And those you can see. And usually the people around you see it and try to intervene. I think the most dangerous one is the inner numbing, which would lead to total collapse, sometimes a nervous breakdown that comes out of nowhere. So it's like, oh, he's so high achiever. It's boom, down. You don't know why. And I think it's people who are developing habits that are addicted to someone, but addicted to bad habits inside their psyche. And a lot of people that I know, it's kind of funny now that I think about it. Yeah, he had it coming. because you know he's working so hard. It's not he's building the company alone and can get the money and it doesn't want to take any partners. And then you find out it's like he's sick, he's out. He had it coming because you can see from the outside, this is not what a human can endure. There are freaks of nature like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that they have very healthy habits that allow them to carry so much and a huge capacity for thinking and focus. And people try to imitate and do the same without that capacity. It's almost like I see the best gymnasts. Now I'm going to do flips in the air like they do and I crash. There's a lot of way of numbing it down.
Yeah, so we've said it big picture that what you want to do with protective emotions is treat them as warning signs that something has gone wrong and that something have gone wrong in reality that you need to address, or something have gone wrong in your thinking that you need to address. And I thought maybe we could dive into some common causes of stress and anxiety that witnessed with really high performers. And the first one I want to point out, and this goes to your story, I think, is doing the wrong work. That is, you're just in the wrong situation. And so you should be feeling negative emotions towards your work, not because you haven't managed your time the right way, but this is not what you should be devoting your life to.
Here's what's so complicated about it. Here I am, a VP in a very successful company. We're growing. It's a $3 billion company, and I'm managing a third of it. And all the signals from the outside, you're doing great. Everything's fine. And this nagging voice in your head says, no, it's not good. It's not interesting. We need to do something else. Now, you got to decide between this nagging voice in your head and everyone who's telling you this is awesome. The balance in the bank account saying this is awesome. When we say doing the wrong work, what constitutes wrong? How would you know? What is the standard one needs to apply in order to say the voice in my head is right versus everyone else? And that was very hard for me because I had to develop a confidence about the authenticity of my own voice. And this is, I think, something most people numb down, because there's something very, very true about your emotions telling you this is not what we should be doing. This is not interesting to us. We don't feel excitement. You cannot yield yourself to excitement, right? Think about sex. You cannot decide, I want to get really excited about that woman. You got a body-mind integration about, wow, that's attractive, and this is not attractive. And for work, like, no, I'm going to make this attractive. You can't. And so I think the real complicated issue about, and people underestimate how complicated it is, what are my emotions telling me? What is my subconscious part of me tell me about my motivation, about the meaning I find in doing this kind of work? It's the same as with other complex issues. You have to slow down and do the work and think about what my emotions are telling, what's behind the emotion. There is the proof that I should be doing something else. And if you slowly realize that everything is bland because the true me is not interested in doing billing systems and software. The true me wanted to talk about big ideas. The true me wanted to be on stage. The true me wanted to do something with education. And that's where you know that it's wrong. Even that, you have to validate.
We should do a whole show on that. I'm sure we will do a whole show on that. But yeah, I think the solution ultimately is do the right work for the right reasons. And then the challenge is how to get there. So we'll have to come back to that. Another one that I definitely experience often is undefined or ill-defined priorities. And particularly it's when I feel like there's too much on my plate. Usually what it means is not that there's literally too much. It's that I haven't really figured out what is on my plate and what's important and what's not.
Yeah, you hear it all the time, right? I just didn't have the time, or I don't have the time to do the important things. Again, it's your subconscious mind saying, lack of meaning. That's the warning sign, the way I interpret it. You're wasting your time on things that don't add up. You know what's important to you. You have that list of priorities. It's staring at you from the whiteboard in my case. But if you analyze the day, 78% of it had nothing to do with it. Where's your judgment? Ill-defined priorities is just a result of negligence in my mind, because your subconscious mind is keeping score all the time. I love it when Ayn Rand says, if you think there's an entity that watches you 24/7 and passes judgment on everything you do, you're right. It's not God. It's your subconscious mind. And this is where I'm grateful that I have this judge in my head that just says, what you just spent an hour and a half on is meaningless. Why? And it punishes you. This is why you get stress by over time doing things that are just not important.
Yeah. And so I think the fundamental solution is to define and honor a hierarchy of values. That is, decide what's important in my life and rank them. And that cascades all the way down to what are the most important things in my life overall, to what are the most important things for this project, to what are the most important things on my radar for today. But it's always thinking in terms of what am I trying to achieve and then what's most important relative to other things. Now, that's kind of undefined and ill-defined demands, but often I think we have unarticulated and sometimes articulated impossible demands that we make on ourselves. And I consider myself first and foremost a writer, and I work with a lot of writers. And I can't tell you how many of them view it as a failure if they publish something that anybody can raise an objection to, or that has a single typo in it, or that doesn't lead to 10,000 likes on Twitter. They're holding themselves to an impossible standard, and it can be really paralyzing when you're trying to create. And I think that's different from holding yourself to a high standard, a high but achievable standard, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of being demanding. There's a crucial line between a high standard and an impossible standard.
I would call it a rational standard, because you want to have high standards and you want to feel you're stretching your capabilities to the maximum. You want to put yourself in environments that demand a lot from you in a way how sometimes I didn't know I could do this. That level, if you have a really good coach, they push you. It all goes back to rationality. It all goes back to where am I? What can I really do? What can I expect from myself? And I think in writing specifically, you're right, it's super hard because people always overestimate how good they are in writing. What's in writing? You just put something on paper. You can see it materialistically in playing tennis. It's like, oh, I know how to play tennis. What's the big deal? Just swing the racket, get it, and then you play someone who's really good. It's like, I don't know how to play tennis. I think part of applying reason with my current level of skills, and that's something I say all the time to young people because they always overestimate how much they know. They don't understand the complexity of what goes into becoming that good. They see the good and then they say, I can just leap forward to being that good. By the way, I'm a racing instructor. So you get people with fast cars getting on the racetrack and it's like, oh my God, you just did a 144 and I do 154, like 10 seconds. No, let's get to 144. I said, give it 5 years. Maybe you'll get to 144. They crash their cars trying to get to 144. It's really about where am I? What can I do? What can I expect to achieve? And we're talking about mental activities. It's pretty hard.
Now, here's a big one, which is failure. And this is, I think, related to holding yourself to impossible demands. You know, if you think that every article or every project is going to succeed and that you're terrified of failure, I mean, my basic view is you're not trying hard enough, that you're holding yourself back, because any difficult thing, any new thing is going to involve a lot of failure. So how do you think about failure?
A lot of people say, oh, I failed. And then I ask, by which standard? What makes this a failure? And then they can define it. It's just it didn't meet my expectations. And then we talk about the expectations. The expectations was completely irrational. So was it a failure? I would start with you calling something a failure. Was it? We said that we want to grow our revenue 200% this year. We did a 168. A failure? Have we done something different? Have we really miscalculated something? So people are very quick to define things as failures because their standards are irrational. We're carrying that from the previous point. But even if you failed because you said, I could do that if I made the right decision, then you can stop, introspect, and learn from what decisions did I make that led to this course of action that led to suboptimal results. Let's call it suboptimal results because the optimal is, let's say, achievable. In which case, if you don't take the time, you wallow into the failure versus this is great. There's something here I don't know. And you extract the wisdom out of the process, then you learn, then you grow. That's the difference between people who are staying average and sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail, and they have a lot of self-esteem issues versus people who take that as an opportunity. The prerequisite here is to have enough self-esteem to say, I can deal with the fact staring me in the face that I made a bad decision, and you should be okay with it.
I heard a business leader years ago tell the story of he had one of his really A-player performers do something that it was a mistake. It cost the company $100,000, and the guy came in expecting, I'm going to get reamed out if I don't lose my job. But the business leader asked him one question, say, what did you learn? And he had an answer. I did this when I should have done that. I should have had a process for this, whatever the answer would be. It's like, okay, that's the conversation that needed to happen because failure is going to happen. But what you need to be doing is extracting the knowledge, extracting the lesson from it.
And you see that when you do lesson learn meetings, you see the people that are coming in very, very defensive. They have this, it wasn't me, it was because I couldn't, and it's pointing fingers. And you see the people that are coming in, it's like, I really blew it. I didn't pay attention to that, what I should have, and so on. And that's a really good sign of who has the self-esteem to learn and to grow and who is wallowing in their defensive mechanisms.
Well, and that gets me to the last point that I wanted to cover as a real source of fear and anxiety. And you can put it as irrational judgments about yourself. But I mentioned my worries as a freelancer, which really came down to like, am I good enough to pull this off and to be able to serve my clients? And to me, this is really the big one in the end. I think it shapes all of the others in most cases. It underlies most of the others. Another way to put it more positively is this is the real leverage. That if you can address this, you're going to be able to make a lot of progress with stress and anxiety.
Now we're getting philosophical. The sad thing about most people that I see are dealing with bad education and bad philosophies is that the standards that they hold and try to practice are just bad and wrong. And it's like holding a compass that continuously points to northeast when you want to go to the north. And so their compass is pointing to the northeast and they end up in the northeast. They want to be in the north. They want to feel good about themselves. But their value judgments are driven by something even deeper, which is a moral code. Because the value judgments are applying a moral code. And the moral code behind those value judgments is wrong. And it's not life-serving. So I don't have an easy solution here. Easy solution is not that easy, which is challenge your code of morality. Sometimes you ask yourself, is it really good to go volunteer every weekend instead of relaxing? Is it good to give away my money? Is it good to believe that everything that is good in my life is because of God and everything that is bad is my fault? And I can go on and on and on to the point I've worked with so many great people in the Silicon Valley and they fail. They're just not happy people. They're doing heroic things. They create heroic journeys and they don't see it as heroic. So they never credit themselves with the work because their code of morality says, and that's not what you should be doing. A good person does something else. And that's really sad. It's tragic.
Self-esteem in the end is the view, am I good? And that's based on what's the standard of good? How am I judging good and evil? And the moral codes that were offered, you gave the analogy to a compass pointing you in the wrong direction. But another way to think of it is it gives you either impossible standards. You can't be good. Human beings are inherently flawed by nature, imperfect creatures. And it even gives you standards that are at odds with what's good for you. And so it creates this conflict. To be a good person is to act against your life and happiness. It's to sacrifice what you want. It's to sacrifice your goals. It's to sacrifice your values. And so the better job you do at living, the more guilt you feel for not doing enough to sacrifice and give up. And so this isn't even a topic we'll do a show on. This is really the show, is that to build the self-esteem that is crucial to a happy life, you need to have standards that are achievable and good for you. You need to have a pro-life, pro-happiness morality. And that's what we champion.
And for this, you have to go back to the deepest thoughts of what is the good, which I had to do turning 40, doing that in the middle of your life, challenging everything your parents told you, everything your teachers have told you, your culture at large, and challenging it is not for the faint-hearted. It's hard. This is why I urge a lot of people to stop sometimes and just say, okay, let's talk about what's good. There's a story about, I was visiting the Googleplex. They were right across the street from us, and we were trying to recruit a lot of people from Google. Everybody was talking, Google is about do no harm. And I said, okay, can you define what harm is? No, actually, we don't talk about what harm is. But it's almost like, isn't that obvious? Just don't hit people, don't murder people. And I said, yes, but let's go further. What about their privacy? What about intellectual property? What about so many questions I can ask about, is that good? Is that doing harm? Autonomous cars, good, bad?
Or what about this one, Tal? Profit. Maybe you can't give it away for free. Maybe you can tell yourself a story of, look, we have to stay in business, but you could be a lot less profitable and stay in business. Is it doing harm to charge more than you absolutely have to your customer? That's a real question that you'd have to face.
And that creates such a conflict with so many people who are creating amazing things in the world because they don't associate profit with the good. And that's part of the bias of that compass I was talking about. And profit is life-serving. Profit is the reward. And if your morality says that's bad, it turns you against yourself. It turns you against life. Those are the conflicts that, unfortunately, if you don't solve at that level, you will always have a bias that then will represent itself and manifest itself in some kind of a conflict, an emotional conflict. And people pay prices, psychological prices and happiness prices by not identifying that the problem starts in the very bottom, which is what is the good.
I'm Don Watkins, he's Tal Savani, and this has been The Unhappy Millionaire. Ready to take the next step in your journey? Visit theunhappymillionaire.com where you can find powerful resources for building a life that you love and details on how you can work with Tal and me.